For months, I've been wondering what the iPhone 17s were actually going to look like, and I finally got to go hands-on with the designs for this year. So today, I want to give you an early exclusive look at the entire iPhone 17 lineup, as Apple is finally trying something different and making one of the most compelling iPhone lineups that we have seen in some time. Now, to be clear, these phones are just mock-ups. They don't actually work. They're not real. They're just a design look at what we're getting in September, and I want to talk about the pros in a second because these are pretty crazy, but I have to start with the iPhone 17 Air. This is Apple's new ultra-thin model, and when you touch this for yourself and you see how thin it is, I think you're gonna want one. From the back, the iPhone 17 Air doesn't look all that interesting. There's just a single camera here. It's gonna be a 48 megapixel sensor, but no dual or triple lens setup, and it's housed inside of a camera bar now, which matches the phone and stretches across the back of the device. Everything else on the back is super minimal, but then you turn it to the side, and that's where you see the magic of this phone. It looks ridiculously thin when you're holding it by itself. It almost looks wrong or too thin, or like the dimensions aren't correct, but they are. This is actually how thin the iPhone 17 Air is going to be, and for context, I want to put it next to the current iPhone 16 Pro. And side by side, it is legitimately mind-blowing. It is nearly half as thin as the current Pro phones, and it does not feel real in your hand either. I also didn't realize how big the screen was on the Air. It's a 6.6-inch OLED 120Hz panel, and it's larger, like considerably, than a Pro-sized iPhone. Still, I know the sticking point for a lot of people is going to be this single camera. This confirms that that is happening. Apple had to cut costs somewhere to keep this at a price point around $900 to $1,000, and it's just going to be one lens. In software, of course, Apple is going to give you the ability to do the 2x telephoto zoom, just like they have on their other single camera phone, the iPhone 16e. But yeah, videos, photos will be a drawback on this model. Notably though, you will still be getting camera control on here, so if you like the ability to zoom in and out on your photos using that button, that is coming here. It's also just wild how thin these buttons are. I think they have to be the thinnest buttons on any Apple product in history, because frankly, the buttons barely fit into the side of the phone. I mean, it's even funnier when you look at the USB-C port on the bottom. It's actually closer to the back of the phone than the front because Apple could not center it. The phone is so thin that they needed room for all of the screen, circuitry, and components, so they ended up having to move the port down a little bit. A weird, interesting tidbit, and also way less speakers on the bottom too. You only get 2 on each side of the phone instead of the normal 5 or 6, so I would absolutely expect the sound on this to be a little rough. Again, how could you fit speakers, battery, cameras, processor, and screen inside of something this tiny? Something's gonna have to be cut, and audio quality is probably the first one to go. I know a lot of people up until this point have been confused as to why Apple would make a phone this thin with such clear compromises, but sometimes the answer is it just looks really cool. And I think that's reason enough for this phone. Now, on top of that, the iPhone 17 will also further Apple's commitment to customer privacy. It's also why I partnered up with Incogni, who sponsored today's video. See, for years without me even knowing, these companies known as data brokers were tracking what I was up to online and then selling that information to the highest bidder. They were making money off of me, and I didn't have a clue. As it turns out, it's your right to tell them to stop selling your stuff, but there's so many data brokers, you have to reach out to them individually that it's just a nightmare scenario. And that's where Incogni comes in. With Incogni, they work on your behalf continuously, and they have this great dashboard where you can see all the requests that they just submitted, the ones currently in progress, and the ones completed, the data brokers that have stopped using your stuff. For myself, almost immediately, I noticed a huge reduction in spam calls. So take your personal data back with Incogni. When you use code AppleTrack at incogni.com/AppleTrack, you can save 60% off an annual plan. Check out the link down below in the description, and a huge thank you to Incogni for sponsoring this video. Okay, now let's get back to it. This year though, the Air isn't the only interesting new model to the iPhone 17 lineup, as Apple's doing something pretty different with the Pros. You can see it immediately with the new camera module design on the back. It no longer just sits in the top left-hand corner. On the iPhone 17 Pro and iPhone 17 Pro Max, it now stretches across the entire top portion of the phone. It still maintains the same triangular camera setup, but for some reason, the flash, the microphone, and the LiDAR, that's been moved all the way over on the right. But Apple being Apple, they're not just changing it so that it looks different, they're changing it because it looks different and they're adding new features underneath. In particular, I think it's because of some big changes coming to the third telephoto zoom lens on the Pros. Like right now, the wide and the ultra wide lenses on the Pro models have a 48 megapixel sensor, but the telephoto zoom never has. That is said to be changing on the 17 Pro, and I believe this is finally going to unlock some serious super zoom capabilities on the iPhone. But wait a second, what about the other big Pro changes? Where's the aluminum unibody design, as Apple was said to finally be ditching titanium, or the all-new cutout for MagSafe to enable reverse wireless charging as we've seen? Yeah, on my models, I don't have any of that. The Pros look almost one-to-one with the current models. I'm not seeing aluminum in particular. I'm not seeing a cutout for MagSafe, and I'm certainly not seeing a unibody design where the front and the back are all connected. There's definitely a few questions outside of the camera bump that I have because, well, pretty much everything else looks the same. The USB-C port on the bottom, the same buttons on the side, volume and action on the left, as well as the side and camera control buttons on the right. Flip it over to the front and you even have the same screen sizes, 6.3 inches on the 17 Pro, 6.9 inches on the 17 Pro Max. And while early rumors said Dynamic Island would finally be getting smaller this year on at least one Pro model, I am not seeing that reflected in these units either. It looks to be identical to the current size of the Dynamic Island, the same one we've had since the iPhone 14 Pro in 2022. Personally, I was expecting a lot more from the Pros. There was a lot of hype around Apple completely redesigning these Pro models this year, but I'm not seeing that. It just kind of looks like a slightly different iPhone 16 Pro, like a spec bump update here, which with the Pros out of the way just leaves one last model. And I saved this one to the end on purpose because, well, this is the base iPhone 17. It's the cheap one that'll be offered for around $800. And I don't think it makes any sense. Side by side with the rest of the iPhone 17 lineup, it doesn't get the same camera bar treatment as every other device. And it looks pretty out of place here, mainly because it looks exactly one-to-one with the iPhone 16. And it's not just the cameras to spoil it. It's every part of this phone. The buttons, the USB-C port, the materials, the screen on the front. All of it, from what I can see, is one-to-one with a current iPhone 16. So there's got to be something more here that we don't know. If I had to guess, this model looking the same, it means that Apple's going to completely reconfigure the naming structure and even the pricing structure for these phones. Like maybe this still starts at $800, but if you want the Air, well, this is $1,000 now. And then Pro iPhones now start at $1,200, and the Pro Max rounds out at like $1,400. I think that's the only way that this one looking the same makes sense. Like, yeah, that one's still $800, but if you want something better, well, that starts at $1,000. To be clear, I don't know any of that for sure. I just don't know another reason why Apple would keep one model the same and the other ones look at least somewhat different or new. Let me know your thoughts down below, not only on that, but the entire iPhone 17 lineup. Either way, I think the model to look out for this year is still going to be the Air. I keep going back to this one. It is by far the coolest looking, and I cannot wait to see a real version of this. I want one that works. I want one that I can carry around in my pocket all day. It's sick. They already got me, and it's not even the real phone. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, drop a like down below. Hit subscribe for more. I've been Sam. Hope you're doing well. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.